I'm Bryan Barich, and I'm here to talk to you about my case study, which is the NCAA paying its student athletes. I feel that if the NCAA pays or compensates their athletes, then their level of competition will go up and it will improve the NCAA game. The two sports I'll be focusing on are basketball and football. The NFL has a rule that their players cannot enter the draft until 3 years after their high school is graduated, and the NBA has what they call a one-and-done rule, meaning they have to play at least 1 year not in the NBA before they can enter the NBA. According to Mark Yost of the Wall Street Journal, only 3% of Division I basketball players that received a full ride scholarship actually make it to the NBA. So it will help the NBA if their players do graduate, because they'll have something to fall back on, because not many of them actually make it to the pros. Do colleges have a social responsibility to help their student athletes graduate? I think so. But first we'll have to make a couple assumptions. Number one, is it legal? It needs to be legal for the players to receive compensation. And two, if the players made more money, then they would be more likely to graduate and stay in school. First, I'm going to talk about a couple examples. First is the Ohio State basketball team. They received about $110 million annually from ticket sales, concessions, parking, and merchandise sales. Each basketball player on their team is paid about $29,000 per year in room, board, books, and tuition. Now, assuming you have 15 scholarship players on the team, that's about $450,000. According to NBA.com, the minimum salary for a rookie in 2010 was just over $450,000, more than the whole Ohio State team is making. This disparity is part of the reason why the players are foregoing their final years in college and entering the professional ranks, a lot of them way too early. Now, assume you're good enough to be the number one pick in a draft like Kevin Durant was in 2007. He signed a $3.5 million contract after foregoing his sophomore, junior, and senior years in college. The University of Texas was only paying him $30,000. The NCAA should allow other players to take endorsements that don't counter what their colleges already are endorsing, such as Michigan State and Nike. Kevin Durant signed a $72 million contract endorsement with Nike, so if he had just gotten that endorsement while in college, he would have only made an additional $3.5 million in the pros, probably not enough to make him turn pro, and he would most likely have graduated. Now, according to James Parker of the AFL-CIO, a full ride doesn't actually pay for anything. Take the University of Michigan, for example. An athlete with a full ride will still owe about $2,000 per year of school at the end of each year. So a typical 4-year athlete will owe about $8,000. Keep in mind, 97% of them don't make the pros and will have to pay that back somehow. There's a disparity between players and coaches. Coaches are making an average of 7 figures, which is on par with head coaches in the professional ranks, and this takes up about 1/3 of the entire athletic department budget. The NCAA says that if a player gets money, then they will lose their amateur status. Well, this doesn't seem fair, because all Olympians other than team sports such as basketball and baseball are amateurs. Michael Phelps, for example, earned $1 million for winning 8 gold medals. Prior to that, he was earning about $5 million annually from companies such as Visa. And keep in mind, we only see him about 2 weeks every 4 years, not like basketball players who are on TV every day. After the gold medals, Phelps is now earning about $30 to $50 million. So if Phelps as an amateur can get endorsements, why can't NCAA athletes? College athletes put in just as much time as employees. They're only required to practice 20 hours per week, but multiple surveys said that players felt if they didn't practice at least 40, then they would be behind the curve. Just like in a business setting, players seek the best opportunities. Brandon Jennings actually skipped college and went to Europe to play professionally. While there, he earned over $3 million from contracts and endorsements, one of them which was with Under Armour. The very next year, he came back to the NBA and was still drafted in the top 10. So as you can see, going overseas is another viable option. If more players realize this, the NCAA will lose a lot of their top talent to Europe for more money, and the product will go down drastically. One reason for the players not being paid is that there's no union, and there's three reasons there are no unions. One, the player turnover rate is too great. 2, the coaches control the playing time and the players' futures. And 3, there's a lot of interconference games, but and they don't play many other conferences, so it's hard for the players to communicate with each other. If athletes made more money in college, then they would be more likely to stay and earn a degree and have something to fall back on in case athletics doesn't work out. Mark Yost from the Wall Street Journal again said the NCAA has graduation standards and is expecting to punish about 45% of college basketball teams and 40% of college football teams, but not too severely. 1 out of every 3 March Madness teams this year did not graduate at least 50% of its players. And keep in mind that only 3% of players actually make it to the NBA. So what happens to those other players? They have no education to fall back on. I see this as a win-win situation for all involved. The level of competition will go up for the NCAA. They won't have to pay that much money because most of it will be through endorsements. 2, the NCAA athletes will be compensated, so they'll be earning a degree while playing in college. And 3, the professional leagues will have a lot less draft busts like Kwame Brown and Ryan Leaf because they'll have a lot more film to evaluate players. The only challenge would be exactly how to do it. Just like in the business world, college athletes will seek the best job. Some players aren't even being paid for the NCAA using their name in video games, merchandise sales. So Ed O'Bannon, formerly of the UCLA Bruins, is leading a lawsuit with many NCAA players, former players, suing for money from video games, jersey sales, and rebroadcasts of classic games that use their names. The NCAA has a responsibility to put out the best product on the field, and that is by paying players. Pros make most of the money from endorsements, so the NCAA wouldn't have to fit the bill too much. Kevin Durant, as I pointed out earlier, made about 95% of his pay from endorsements. There are a few ethical issues and questions. Why does the NCAA get away with paying players well below market value? Do colleges have a social responsibility to help players graduate? Why do some amateurs get to make endorsement money while the NCAA bans them for their players? So I have 5 proposals. The first will be the team split 25% of the gates at the end of the season between the players. If a player decides to leave school early, he'll forfeit that money that will be divvied up between the rest of the players. 2, NCAA athletes can endorse certain products as long as they don't counter what their college is already endorsing, such as Michigan and Adidas. A player would not be allowed to endorse Nike. Athletes could also do speaking engagements that make money, but there should be a limit, such as 1 per week or 10 per season, or whatever the NCAA would decide. 4th, full-ride scholarships should be full-ride scholarships, and the athletes should not owe anything once they leave school. 5th, players should be entitled to a portion of sales from video games and jerseys. So in conclusion, I believe that the NCAA is doing a poor job of rewarding the student athlete. Thus, their competition will be going down as more players seek jobs in Europe. If the players are rewarded, I have a feeling that they would like to stay closer to home, and the level of competition will go up and graduation rates will rise, which will help the players who will have something to fall back on if they do not make it in the pros. Thank you.